All right, we have this guy, Sean Enux. I don't know anything about him other than he is like Dan Corrigan's friend and skater and also Australian. He posted this video, Living in America as Australian, the truth. I thought this is interesting for particularly me because I am an Australian living in America. I think we've lived here a similar amount of time. And we're both skaters too. So I have a lot of thoughts of my own about living in America as an Australian, and I'm curious to see what another Australian thinks. He even writes "G'day guys" here. So let's see. You think he's gonna open it with "G'day"?
This November marks 5 years since I took the leap of faith and packed up my entire life, moved from Australia to the other side of the world. I can still vividly recall how I felt stepping off the plane at LAX and taking those first few steps on American soil. Now, for many people, the idea of relocating to the States during a global pandemic.
How's his accent compared to mine? His accent is honestly kind of weak too. His accent is a bit faded as well. But look, it looks like it's the same story. He moved in during COVID as well.
Might seem reckless or even irresponsible, especially coming from a relatively safe country like Australia. But the truth is...
Relatively? Bro, Australia's one of the safest countries in the world. I would say Australia's one of the safest countries in the world. Relatively. Come on.
Especially coming to the States during a global pandemic might seem reckless or even irresponsible, especially coming from a relatively safe country like Australia. But the truth
Look at our beautiful skate park.
Short, and sometimes you have to take risks. Stepping outside your comfort zone can propel you towards your dreams. And let's be honest, life without risk sucks.
I want an Australian to say, yeah, this park, El Sereno, it's cool, but in Australia, we have 1 billion parks that are way better and they're literally everywhere, and it's no big deal. I wonder if he'll talk about the skate park quality.
First try. Yeah, me too.
It's funny in these type of videos.
My channel, my name is Sean and I've been living in the United States for close to 5 years now. I decided to throw myself completely out of my comfort zone, hoping for a different lifestyle.
What is this hat? We don't dial 911. Is this a clue about what he's gonna think? I don't know about this hat.
More freedom and the pursuit of happiness. And I'm incredibly grateful to say that I am now happily married.
Where's my American flag? I have it. I literally have it right here. I do have one somewhere. I don't know. I used to have it hanging in my old bedroom when I was in San Leandro.
Surrounded by like-minded people, and I've never felt more content with my life, but it hasn't always been that way. So to clarify, I didn't just pick up and leave to the US without a plan. I had been traveling back and forth from my home in Sydney.
I wonder what his visa situation is, to be honest. Because like I would have never been able to get the visa without working at Braille, and it was extremely difficult. It's not something you can just apply for. You basically have to have like a legitimate reason, like your American business is trying to hire you, and you prove that you're kind of like worthy of them hiring outside of the country. There's a lot of work, so I'm kind of curious what he's doing, or if he's doing anything naughty and he just admits it in the video.
To Southern California since late 2018.
He's married? Okay, makes sense.
It's not so sunny in California right now, though. It's raining, as you can see.
He married an American?
Yeah.
So basically, each time my trip would come to an end and I'd have to head back to LAX to get a plane back home to Australia, I'd always feel in the back of my head like, I wish I could just stay here. I like it here so much better. And that's probably hard for people to understand, considering the whole political thing going on right now, but this is back in like 2018. It really hadn't gone downhill yet. The biggest comfort for me was that the US is an English-speaking country, so I wouldn't have to worry about a language barrier, so I thought. Growing up in
how he talks is how Australians talk. See how he's kind of like intonation is like slow. That's very typical of Australians. Rick, I thought your visa was like 6 years or something. Are you gonna go back? The visa is 5 years. When I first got it, I kind of messed it up, and it was I only activated 2 of the 5 years. Then I had to renew it basically like straight away. Then I got another 5 years. So my 7-year date of the visa renewed one time, so like 2 visas once renewed, will be 2026. I think it was end of 2026, like November 2026. So then I would have to renew again or figure something out. But now Janice and I are going to be married by then, so then I can apply. I can change to the like partner visa thing and get a green card. I just have to figure out exactly how to do that though. But I still on my technical visa. I have until November 2026. Trump isn't going to renew that. Well, now I get the green card. Now I got the green card marriage going, so easy.
Australia, we have our own unique way of speaking English. Depending on where you're from, there's different slang and communication styles.
I think this guy's not from Melbourne.
So I'd say my accent is a
So in Melbourne, we hate Sydney. Just kidding. But Melbourne and Sydney always had kind of rival. I guess it's kind of like New York, LA. Biggie Tupac type of situation. He's from Perth. Ricky's good people. I'm just kidding. I didn't mean to give him rude finger gesture. But I don't know. Sydney, I felt like Melbourne were more the second, like the younger brother. Sydney is the older brother. And Sydney was a bit more like pretentious. And Melbourne was always like, yeah, we don't like Sydney. And then you go to Sydney and they're always kind of like rude and shit. We got ups in Sydney, yeah. He seems more like mid-Queensland or Perth. Yeah, I would agree. He doesn't seem like he's born in Sydney. Maybe he'll tell us.
Regional Australian one, whereas someone from like northern Queensland would sound a lot different. There's different slang and communication styles. I'm from Sydney myself, so I'd say my accent is a regional Australian one, whereas someone from like northern Queensland would sound a lot different than I do. When I started venturing out in public and communicating with people, things got a little confusing and awkward. Take the word toilet, for instance. Back home we call them dunnies, but over here they call them restrooms, so...
I gotta go to the fucking dunny, mate. Can I get a fucking dunny? Yeah, I would say, I need to use the bathroom. And then they go, what is the bathroom? Do you mean the restroom? And I go, I don't fucking know. It's the shitter.
I would get into the groove of being like, hey, like, whereabouts is the toilet? And I'd kind of get a weird look because they don't call them toilets here, they're called restrooms. So unless you're my close friend here, when I say dunny, you probably understand what I mean. But I'd have to go around and ask people like, hey, where's the restroom?
Dunnage? No, he said dunny. D-U-N-N-Y. Dunny is like outhouse, basically. Where's the dunny? You would say that as like a crude way of saying toilet.
After a few times where I'd ask people, and
I say bathroom?
like,
okay.
Is a toilet, they'd kind of give me a weird look. That's when I started calling them restrooms. So I've had to kind of change
I hate
my
restroom.
vocabulary.
I say
up
restroom there.
So I feel like the hardest / easiest thing for me, like moving over here, was like making friends. Obviously I skate, so it was super easy for me to meet other skateboarders and like, you know, get on sessions of skaters and like hang out. But I felt like I had to be this different version of myself, obviously, because I had to learn not a new language, but a new way of speaking. The culture's different from Australia to America, so I had to kind of like switch it up and almost feel like a hybrid, almost like Australian American. I felt like
I also feel like a hybrid of an Australian American, but I didn't think I had to change myself really. I didn't think I had to really switch up. I feel like Australia looks to American all of pop culture that you see in Australia anyway. So it's like, it's usually the way that Australians are a certain type of way, but they know how Americans are. Whereas Americans are a certain type of way, but they don't know how Australians are. They think Outback Steakhouse.
I needed to kind of assimilate to that American culture in a way to like fit in with everybody. And the version of myself that they were getting was like a different kind of version to the type of person I was back home kind of thing. With time, I kind of ended up loosening up a bit. And I feel like, you know, my mates like Dan and Dale, they kind of experienced that Australian side of me because I felt a lot more looser. Like, I'd trip on saying like the C word out here.
Does Oz have laws like Canada where you have a percentage of TV and stuff has to be Canadian? I don't think so. What happened with that? I remember seeing a big thing about YouTube, that Canadian YouTube was not going to recommend. Look how American this is. He's definitely not skating in Australia. I don't think Australia has anything like that. When you would watch TV, the news is Australian. The talk show is Australian. The soap opera, daily soap opera is Australian. Other than that, pretty much everything's American. It's just like minor stuff's Australian, everything else American. Like, you know, it plays Everybody Loves Raymond and shit. It plays fucking Nickelodeon cartoons and stuff. It doesn't really play like Australian shows. There's some Australian shows, but there's not like a whole lot. I guess, yeah, they would make, you know, American Idol, they'll make Australian Idol. The reality shows, they would remake the Australian versions. That's one thing they would do. Yeah, they do have the two government-owned channels,
I
actually.
was gonna get it. Oh yeah, good shit.
Thank you, sir. I will say that I had an ace up my sleeve with the fact that I am from Australia and Americans love Australians. Like wherever I would go, they'd pick up on the accent and I'd start talking to me, and people were like super friendly to me. And I've even had cops like let me off on stuff because I'm Australian. So that's an ace I kept up my sleeve. It might have been different if I was from like England or something, you know. The history with Americans and Great Britain isn't very pretty. One thing that kind of got kind of annoying was like the whole like, oh, you're from Australia, like your uncle must be Crocodile Dundee, or like, do you live in the outback, or like, do you ride kangaroos to school? Main misconceptions about Australia.
Yeah, you tell them that.
Ride kangaroos to school.
You lie. If someone says what's it like in Australia, you go, yeah, I would pack my school books into the kangaroo's pouch, ride it to school. You got to watch out for the koalas. They might bite you, blah, blah, blah. I think it's fun to lie because it's like, how do you know so little about the world? They really think Australia is like literally in the outback. They don't think of a city.
And we fight crocodiles in the outback and stuff. And it's not like that. I'm literally from Sydney and it's like a populated city. It's not like I'm from the outback, but it was just funny. People would be like, oh, do you really see
You gotta lie.
kangaroos? And
That's
where
the
I
only
live,
time
it's kinda
lying is
rural up
allowed.
here, so there would be wild kangaroos and they'd be like, oh, did you ever fight a kangaroo? Like stuff like that kind of got old. Not super quick, but like over the years I was kind of like, oh yeah, here's this question again. Biggest hurdle
The most common thing someone says to me, I go, blah, 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 Australia. They go, oh, all the spiders and the crocodiles, they're gonna get ya.
say though was like
They always say
adapting
that.
to
Oh, the spiders.
because
Who
as
cares?
you know, the Americans stuck to the imperial system, whereas the rest of the world went to metric. And I believe that they stuck with the imperial system because they didn't want to be the same like the rest of the world. I had to quickly learn that a mile was 1.6 kilometers, so half a mile.
I didn't know
would be
exactly
800
how long it
meters,
is.
and a quarter of a mile would be 400 meters. So that's how I kind of navigated when I'd see the signs where it'd be like 3/4 of a mile. That means it's 1,200 meters or 1.2 kilometers. And if it would said like half a mile, 800 meters. Pretty much learnt that, like try to learn that straight away once I got over here. The whole inch and half an inch and quarter of an inch still confuses me, but luckily we have Google, and whenever I'm building something at the house, like I always keep a tape measure with me. So before we dive deeper into
Yeah, inches is fried. Sorry, but inch is dumb. Why is it a quarter of an inch? Jesus. Can we just get some millimeters going? Come on. I feel like, do people ever use millimeters? Janice, I just got wrapped 136, drive home for Santa Monica. What should I do? Whatever you feel in your soul, Janice. You want to go watch Snow White tonight? Should we get Snow White book report, guys? What's a millimeter? Permanent ban. DK, it's sad to see you go. Am I going to film videos? I'll do streams, for sure. We can stream with my parents. Shit might get crazy. Come meet me here for Snow White, lol. No, Janice. You come here and then we go to the local Snow White. Minimum size is 132. Yeah, weird. Millimeters way smaller. 10 millimeters to a centimeter. So 22 millimeters to an inch, I think. Nothing in the real world is based on 10, but you can take anything, cut it in half. Getting bad reviews? Yeah, well, we're going purely to watch the train wreck, would be why. It'll only take you 20 minutes to get here. I don't know, Janice. I think come to the local one and we go at like 750 or whatever the time is. How many millimeters to a gallon? Too many.
this video, I just want to give a quick PSA to you guys. If you use the code HOMIES15 at checkout at eveningmob.com, you'll get 15% off, and I'm giving away free flags and free stickers.
Is this his merch?
So make sure you check out eveningmob.com.
Mob is kind of like an Australian word.
Most of the stuff is handmade by me, like I screen print it in this garage right here. So if you guys want to support me, head on over to eveningmob.com, pick something up. Some of the craziest culture shocks I kind of experienced was like the drive-through culture. Like people will sit in their cars at an In-N-Out drive-through for like 45 minutes instead of like parking up and walking and placing an order, getting your food.
I think there's a story on Instagram. I'm like, why is everyone in the Starbucks drive-through line? Why don't you just walk in? I agree with him there.
within like 5-10 minutes. They're willing to like sit in their car and just wait, even if the drive-through line's like hella long. Another crazy thing that I found about America is like the portion sizes. Like if you go to McDonald's here and get a large drink, it's like massive, like it's literally huge. I think we used to have this size back in Australia. We used to be called like extra large or something. It was a big red cup from Macca's, but they've banned that since then. And basically, our large is like a regular or medium here, to put that into perspective. Another thing that kind of didn't take as much getting used to as I thought was like driving on the opposite side of the road. Because as you know, in Australia, we drive on the left-hand side of the road. The steering wheel is on the right-hand side of the car, whereas over here, it's back.
If he doesn't talk about homeless and drug, I'm kind of bummed on the vid. He has to, surely. But I feel like he might not. Ever seen Idiocracy? Yes, absolute banging movie. This must be an old vid? No, it's new. And I think it did well for his channel. 12K. So look, I think he made a follow-up. Yeah, look, that performed well. Like 1K, 2K, 1K, 2K, 12K, 3K, 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 and then he followed it up. Australians absolutely hate this about America. What the fuck? WTF? Let's let him finish that.
Backwards. We're driving on the right-hand side of the road and the steering wheel is on the left-hand side. So I thought I would have more trouble with like learning to drive on the right-hand side of the road here, but growing up I played so much GTA, like I was already kind of mentally accustomed to like being able to drive on the right-hand side of the road and like
Don't
make
say
left turns
that.
and such, because it does get a bit confusing and like touch
Do you
wood,
follow the
there's
road
only
rules
been
in
a couple of
GTA? I not once have I ever followed the road rules in GTA. Like I said, I never played the new one. I only played San Andreas. I never waited at a light and turned left and right. Absolutely not. I just drive as fast as I can at all times.
small instances where I've ended up on the other side of the road, the wrong side of the road, I mean.
I think one of the hardest challenges I faced over here was like once I split from my ex, I felt kind of really isolated and like I didn't belong here kind of thing. But thankfully I had family over here that I could stay with, and I stayed with my aunt and uncle. I slept on the couch for like 3 months until I found my own place. But it was tough because half of me wanted to just, you know, run back home to Australia and just stay in my room, you know. But the other half of me was like, no, you need to see it through. Everything kind of happens for a reason.
No rules in
And
GTA,
I was
exactly.
still kind of stoked on the fact that I am here in the United States. I just kind of stuck to my guns, and yeah, it all worked out in the end. I still trip out to this day. Like I'll play GTA 5 and like be driving around Vespucci Beach, and I'm like, damn, this is like real. I could literally get in the car and drive to Venice right now and like walk around here in real life. So it's like, I feel kind of shook. And
Thank you so much for the sub, Pete. Pete D. Appreciate the 12 months. Let's go. When you're building through how many feet and
for a long
inches?
time I'd be waking up in the morning, and you know when you're kind of waking up and you don't know where you are kind of thing, I'd have to remind myself like, oh shit, like
I feel like he's getting off
crazy.
topic a
Another
little bit.
crazy
Yeah.
thing I've found myself having to change up is just like the mannerisms. Like in Australia, if someone says like, oh, thank you, you just go like, oh yeah, it's all right, mate, or no worries. But over here, if you say it's all right to someone, it's kind of like insulting. They're kind of like, it's all right. What do you mean it's all right? So you have to say, of course. So the American way of saying no, what?
No, you have to say you're welcome. Thank you. You're welcome. I agree with him there, though. I'll say no worries or it's all right, and people would be confused. Even Janice would be a little confused.
Worries is saying, of course. So if someone says, hey, like, thanks heaps, you say, of course, dude, of course. So that's one thing that I've noticed me changing up my mannerisms, is just like having to change little things like that, because if I say it's all right to someone, they might become offended. So I find myself saying like,
I mean, you shouldn't change. One thing that I'll say is they go, what's your name? Ricky Glaser. Rickyglaser. Glaser. And they go, huh? Glaser. They go, what? And they go, R. Oh, R. Oh, Glaser. I've never heard Ricky say reckon. Yeah, well, because I'm losing it all. But that one I do say. I'm at the store, I go, Glaser. Because when I say they don't know.
Sir and ma'am a lot. Instead of being like, oh, thanks, mate, I'll be like, oh, thank you, sir, or thank you, ma'am. And I say dude a lot more, but I feel like that's like a Southern California thing. Like, people are always saying dude over here. Overall, though, I don't regret moving here one bit. And I still have not been home to Australia, so it's been almost 5 years now. I do miss it.
I haven't heard
don't
Ricky
get me
say the
wrong,
C
but
word.
I do really like living here.
Should
and
I
found
say
the
it
love
right
of
now?
my life. I have so much fun here, skating and riding dirt bikes and snowboarding. Like, literally, the mountain is an hour and a half away to go snowboarding. I was driving 4.5, 5 hours from Campbelltown to Jindabyne to go snowboarding. So we can literally take a day trip to go snowboarding. The mountains are right there. If we want to go out to the desert is right there. The beaches are right here. I feel like I'm very geographically kind of privileged here because I have that at my fingertips. Whereas back home in Australia, yeah, the beach was close, but the mountains were so far away.
That's kind of true, I guess. Easy to go snowboarding. Janice, did you see all the positive comments on my Instagram? Yes, Janice. How's your post going? Was it a fun prank?
These two dogs would be banned in Australia. He'd be banned and she'd be banned. Not only because she's pitbull, but she's half a dingo. Come here.
Yeah, Australians love rules. I'll give them that.
You're a nutcase.
They love paperwork, love rules. Banning a dog. How can you ban a dog?
You want me to ship you back to Fraser Island? Huh? The other dingoes?
If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you probably understand that this is a different
Mike,
kind
I've
of
heard
video.
too rare and beautiful.
And basically, like, I need to step it up over here. Like, I can't just go for a skate once a week and film it and think like a video is going to do good or that my channel's going to grow. Like, I feel like I need to do this more than just skateboarding. Like, I need to broaden the audience here, which I'm always going to. Skateboarding is a massive part of my life. I'm always going to go skate. I'm always going to be a skateboarder, but I feel like I just need to broaden the content aspect of this channel within restraints. Of course, I'm not going to start making videos on like Minecraft or anything like that, but I just feel like I need to start leaning into the more personality.
Bro, he didn't even touch on the real topics.
Putting all of my self-worth into a skateboard, which is fine, but I beat myself up so hard those times when I can't get out and skate and make a video. Like, I'm so hard on myself, and I need to realize like my self-worth isn't dictated
honestly
by what tricks I can do.
Like, this was a nice video. If I give him some critique, he missed I feel like he kind of missed like the big contention. If I were to structure this video, I would say Australia, like how I refer to Australia is playing the video game tutorial level or the video game on easy. Yeah, it's fun. Some good things, some bad things. Then when you play on hardcore, extreme good things can happen, extreme bad things can happen. I feel like Australia's life on easy mode, America's life on extreme hardcore difficulty. You could go millions of dollars in medical debt, or you could get sick brand deals and become famous. Australia, like both of those things is like harder to happen. Whereas like it's much more intense, I feel like in America. I feel like obviously there's way more opportunity in California than in Victoria or New South Wales, where we are from in Australia. But the biggest difference that I dislike the most about America is the safety. Is like we were watching a little bit earlier in the stream. You go somewhere, you do not feel safe at all. I mean, maybe if I'm a citizen, get the pew pew, maybe I feel safer. Even in your house, someone just gonna come and break into your house. You feel like, I don't know, living in like a bad-ish area. Like, I didn't even live in the worst area, but just being in the bad-ish area, I fucking hate being around in a bad area. To me, it's like, it really bums me out like a lot. Whereas in Australia, there's medium, like the worst area in my city of Melbourne that you could ever go to is almost like the good area in California. You know, like the worst of the worst is probably like what you would consider like good in California, which I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that you can never let your guard down. I feel like in Australia, I was spoiled that I would always let my guard down. You're just out. I never think I'm going to get robbed. I'm walking around on the street. I would never think, don't have an expensive camera. Don't put it in your car. Don't do this. I would never think about anything like that. The thought of getting mugged and robbed is like 0%. I'll go jogging in the night with nothing on me. Feel so good about it, you know? Whereas, I wouldn't want to walk around here. I don't know. I think you just aren't acclimated, constantly on guard. I'm not constantly on guard. Yeah, I don't know. But like, I don't know why this dude didn't touch on it. I feel like that's the most interesting thing to talk about.
I'm just going to be trying to post as many videos as I can. And I've probably said this before, but I'm coming at it with a totally different angle this
Most
time.
of America
I
is
just
not
wanna
like
make
that.
videos.
Well, I don't know. Well, okay, my experience is going from big Australian city to big American city. Melbourne to LA. That's my specific experience. Melbourne to SF to LA. That's my specific experience. Not from Melbourne to small country town. Not from country Australia to city America. It's big city Australia to big city America. I feel unsafe in my suburb. Bro, to hear you say sentences like that breaks my fucking heart. Maybe I just had such a privileged life in a privileged country that I'm spoiled and ruined, but like, it makes me sad to not feel safe. California is like that. I don't know. It makes me sad. It really does make me sad. And I'll say as an Australian too, I used to be kind of like, I said I feel safe. Oh, okay. My bad, yeah. You brightened my day then. One thing that I would say is in Australia, I used to be kind of like, yeah, people don't really need guns. Like, why would you need a gun? I come to California, I'm like, give me the gun, let me blow them away. You come near me, I'll blow you the fuck away. Like, I get it. I understand the difference. I understand that you absolutely do. Someone's just gonna come and squatters' rights in your house and take your house? Hell no, blow them away. Like, what the hell? I don't know. It's been interesting. It's been an interesting journey. I feel like I've been learning a lot. 5 years. I'm very interested to see when I go to Australia in a week or whatever. I want to go around, look around, and see how it's been impacted since COVID. Because some people are telling me that it's been very negatively impacted as well. I'm curious to see what my city is like now. California's on fire. Ground shakes. Not even safe without people. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. But yeah, shout out to this guy. Good stuff. Nice, interesting topic. I mean, maybe he touches it on it in the next one. Should we just real quick skim it and see?
A lot of people believe that Australians are some of the most friendliest, laid-back individuals on earth. And as an Australian myself, I couldn't disagree more. So about a week ago, I made a video about myself, an Australian, moving to America and just shared my experience. I tried to keep it as neutral as possible. And I really didn't think too
Why? Just give your experience. Doesn't need to be neutral.
much of it. Initially, the comments and feedback were quite positive, so I thought all was well. However, as the video remained up, more negative comments began to roll in. And take a guess who the main perpetrators were. Australians. While I'm super grateful to be born and raised in Australia, and I understand why so many people view it as the lucky country, there are a ton of social stigmas that go along with that.
All right, I guess we're gonna watch this.
Don't get me wrong, I am so grateful that I was brought up in Australia, because if I was brought up in America as a youngster, I would have turned out a lot different. I was quite the wild child growing up, so I'm super grateful that I had the restrictions that I did back then. When I was 4 years old, my mum and I traveled to the United States to visit my aunt and uncle, and she almost wanted to stay here, but ultimately she decided that taking me back to Australia and raising me there was the right choice, and I'm forever grateful for that decision she made for me. Despite the US and Australia both being developed, westernized countries, there's crazy differences between the US and Australia socially. Growing up in Australia, we learned from like a young age that anybody pursuing something that's like out of the norm are considered weird.
Yeah, I mean, I relate to that experience. In Australia, they call it small poppy syndrome, where they're saying like it's where the leaves grow up, and the leaves grow up, and then the people that are lower down, instead of them trying to grow up, they just want to cut you down, so then like everyone's equal. I kind of agree with that. Like I've said before, like my friends, they weren't like super negative, but they'll always just be kind of like, oh yeah, Ricky's on that weird shit. Like Ricky's on that crazy weird shit. Like he's always doing the most. He's always like kind of had like try hard vibes, you know? And like they wouldn't not be supportive, but they definitely weren't like super supportive. And even like as I went on this path of like being able to move, you know, having success on social media and being able to move, get this job and stuff, like I don't want to say that they were not stoked, but I don't know. Like, it maybe wasn't exactly as how I thought it would have gone, I guess. But maybe we can interview him when I go and we can talk to him about it. Australians grow up being told to accept authority and obey the government. Americans don't accept the government as the new ruler of their lives. I mean, yeah, in general. Sounds like jealousy. I mean, I wouldn't say it's jealousy. But it was more just like they say, hey, you got to accept that, like, we're in Australia and we just get a job in Australia and that's it. Whereas I'm like, no, let's see what I can do. It wasn't more like, oh yeah, you're doing good, like keep going, like you're doing so good. It was more just like, oh yeah, you're on that weird shit. It was more kind of like that. I don't know.
This belief fosters the idea that anybody that's pursuing something out of the Aussie norm are likely to fail. In Australia, we call this tall poppy syndrome. According to Wikipedia, tall poppy syndrome refers to people with notable public success who excessively promote their own achievements and opinions. Intense scrutiny.
The like self-promo is like, even some of my friends when I was like 15, they're like, self-props, don't do self-props. I'm like, yeah, of course you've got to be like modest and humble to a degree. But at the same time, it's like, don't shoot yourself in the
Criticism
foot
of such
trying to please other people.
Termed cutting down the tall poppy. So basically, anybody in Australia that is pursuing success.
This video is better. This follow-up video is better than this other one already.
It's ingrained in Australian culture to cut them down. I feel like this social stigma comes from the early days of when Australia was a penal colony, because the really well behaved prisoners end up becoming the first police of Australia. So it's basically.
That's wild. I never heard the phrase tall poppy syndrome. It's like they're trying to keep everyone down. Well, it's like crabs in a bucket, they say. One crab starts to get out and the other crab gets them because they're trying to get out, right? It's kind of like the more eloquent version of that, I guess.
You're like, there's old convicts and they're like, oh, you think you're better than me because you're trying to do.
Yeah, and also tall poppy syndrome is about sticking out from the crowd. You look at a poppy field and they're all one sticking out of the top. It gets cut down to be the same length. Yeah, so it's saying like you should be incentivized to stay here. If you go like this, then you're the one that's going to get cut down.
Do something with your life. I feel like that whole stigma has just evolved and like still stuck in Australian culture from then up until now, basically. I'm not the only Australian that feels that way either. However, the reality is, unless you're like trying to become like a football player or you're opening your own business in the trades like plumbing or carpentry or something, people are going to look at you weird and judge you for like choosing that path. I experienced this tall poppy syndrome firsthand, like when I first started making YouTube videos back home.
Oh yeah, skaters don't like that. Don't film at the skate park, brother. You don't want to do that. No, not really. I would say in general, if you walk around LA or whatever and you're holding the camera, oh yeah, today I'm at the mall and I'm going to class. No one gives a fuck. No one cares at all. You do that in Australia, a little bit more care. But maybe it's evolved now. Like I haven't been there in a while. Maybe it's evolved more. But used to, when I would film, I would put my tripod and film Instagram clips at the skate park. I wouldn't say that people were like against it, but they were a little bit like, oh, this guy's doing this. Whereas now it's way more common, I feel like. But they were a little bit like, bro, he's really going to film this?
My group of friends I had back then, like some of them like completely ostracized me, judged me. I was like kicked out of group chats. I was uninvited off skate sessions. Like a bunch of stuff happened. They would talk bad behind my back and stuff, purely because I wanted to make videos and skate and post.
Look how good those parks are everywhere.
Just because of that old Australian tall poppy syndrome, which I believe comes from the convict days. And you know what I said at the fact of all them like switching up on me? I said, F them, like I don't need them. Like my pursuit of what I want to do is much greater than having fake mates around like that. So I just said F them, did my own thing, stuck to my guns, and now we are here today. And I'm not alone in saying this. There are so many Australians I've spoken to and seen online that do believe that this whole social stigma isn't normal. In the USA, starting a career, trying to find your feet in like entertainment, music, whatever. It's so normal and acceptable here. And I've even met countless Americans out skating that I've told them about my channel and everything, and they're just like, right on, dude, more power to you, keep it going, brother.
Yeah,
like they are so positive.
That's more the attitude. I guess it's maybe like less judgy, and obviously this is all extreme generalizations and it like depends person to person, whatever. But I would say in America the culture is like, hey, I'm gonna do this crazy thing. American girls, yeah, right on, man, right on, man, right on, dude. They kind of say that. Whereas in Australia, they go, really? You're going to do that? Oh my God, that's crazy, blah, blah, blah. Oh, no one we know does that. No one does that. It's kind of like that a little bit. Whereas America, they go, yeah, right on, whatever.
Whereas Australians are kind of just like, oh yeah, you think that's going to go far, mate? Like they'll take the absolute piss out of you for trying to do something that isn't within the social norms of Australian society. And it's crazy to think there's a perspective change, because like Americans understand that those people doing something, it can happen. They can forge careers out of nothing. It's a real thing here. Whereas back home, it's not so common. So they don't think it's real. And they're conditioned to thinking that it's like lame or that you're a wanker for trying to do something that's like...
Yeah, I'll agree with that. The like celebrity culture or whatever like is a little bit less. Because here you can kind of say like, hey, I knew this person and they became rich and famous. Whereas in Australia, it's way harder to become rich and famous. You basically have to move to America effectively. So it's like people don't see it as a possibility, and they kind of see that world as like a separate world. And they say, you're in this world, bro, and you're delusional thinking you can get to that world. Whereas when you're in America, I feel like you're in this world and that world's closer, that it seems more possible. So that the people are more open to be like, yeah, it could happen, maybe. Whereas in Australia, it does really feel like you feel kind of isolated. And they say, like, this is Australia, dude. You're never going to go there.
Out of the norm. The Australian way of life is so simple. Like, it's go to work, go to the pub, go to the footy game. It's really rare for Australians to kind of venture out of that social norm that exists within Australia. Nobody bats an eyelid when somebody wants to travel to Europe or they want to travel to Southeast Asia. But once you tell them, like, oh, I'm going to go to the United States, that's when the coin flips. That's when it's like, the USA, why
in
would
general,
you want to go to the United States?
I would say Americans don't realize, in general, Australians like low-key like hate America. Like I feel like Americans are maybe a little bit self-centered, that they feel like they kind of think that everyone loves America. But I would say Australians, like, if they say, I'm going to move to America, they'll be like, why? What the fuck? Like, don't go there. You're going to get killed in a mass shooting or whatever. They'll say something like that, I think, in general. But I feel like Americans don't realize that. They kind of think like, oh yeah, those Aussies down under, they love America. I feel like they don't realize that people could like dislike them.
For, are you crazy? Why would you want to go to the States for, mate? You're more than likely to be shot walking to the corner store. Somebody actually commented that you're more likely to be shot walking to the corner store in the United States. Do you realize how close-minded those beliefs are? Especially if you've never stepped foot in the US, but you're sitting in your safe, isolated island country back home being like, oh, you're going to get shot over there, or blah, 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 this or that. It's like, you haven't even been here. How would you have the experience?
Do Australians not love America? What pop culture do they follow? What fashion trends do they follow? What content do they watch? They love the pop culture, Janice, but they hate America, kind of. Not hate, right? Hate's the wrong word. But they don't have the view of, like, the American is the best, kind of. Like, Blade, the Australian in the chat's agreeing with me. Too true, he says. I don't know. It's hard. Maybe it's hard for me to articulate. When I'm streaming, we'll ask them, why don't we go a man on the street and say, what do you think about Americans? And they'll say, oh, you sound American. I gotta play up my accent. Hey, what the fuck, mate? What do you fucking think about Americans?
And like the knowledge to understand what it's like being over here. So many Australians think you're going to be shot coming to America. It's crazy. What about the American family you see out on a day out in Darling Harbour, enjoying the country and taking it in for what it is? Do you think they're scared of like drop bears and koalas and spiders? No, they're there to see it for themselves and experience it for themselves. I honestly believe that Australians are as scared of guns as Americans are scared of spiders and snake.
I feel like being afraid of guns is valid. To a degree.
And that's fine. If you don't feel comfortable coming to the US, don't. But the thing that gets me is just this pure entitlement to like judge how we live in this country. It's crazy. Nobody bats an eyelid when their friend wants to move to Spain for the summer, or when the couple that just got married head to Bali for their honeymoon. Australians struggle.
I like this. His first video, he goes, I was trying to keep it objective, and I said, why? Now the objective is gone. Now he's got strong opinions in this one.
So hard to comprehend how we live in America. Like George Bush said,
they hate our freedoms.
Australians are so conditioned to believe that the Australian way of life is the only acceptable one in the Western world. Now, this is all about perspective, right? I'm super grateful for my Australian upbringing, but as I got older, I kind of started to realize things that I didn't quite like about living in Australia. Especially the last few years of me living in Australia, like the pandemic and how they handled it.
Janice, I feel like it's hypocritical to like old things that come from America and then say they hate America. Like I said, hate's not the best word, but yes, many people are hypocrites. Being a hypocrite is not this thing that doesn't exist. People are hypocrites all the time, right? So yes, they are. Is it hypocritical? Yes, I agree.
I literally had to ask permission from the government to leave Australia.
Same.
To basically
we probably
leave.
left in the exact same time period.
Write them an email and then tell them why I deserve to leave and blah, blah, blah. I basically had to like ask them for permission.
I had to beg them to leave.
Does that sound like a free country to you? Now, a lot of Australians, this is funny, a lot of Australians are going to defend the government's response to COVID. But how do you forget things like what Dan
Sensitive.
Andrews did to Victoria, or that poor pregnant woman that got arrested for posting an event on Facebook, and she was charged with inciting a riot because she
Yeah, it just reminded me of a story. Back in, I want to say I'm like 18, maybe. This guy, maybe just of 18, maybe I'm 20. This one guy in skate world, I won't say his name for whatever reason. This one guy in skate world, he posts a Facebook event. Remember when you used to do Facebook events? He posts a Facebook event. This was probably around the Kate's Party era. Does anyone remember that thing that went viral, Kate's Party, and it had like millions of people attending Kate's Party? He posted a Facebook event, New Year's Eve at Edinburgh Gardens. It's a place in Australia. It's kind of like this big grassy park area. There's a skate park there. People go and have New Year's parties there. It's just unlimited different groups flock there and have a party in just a park, like a random park. He posted a group, hey, my friends, my specific friends, come, we'll go to the park where everyone goes. And then the park got all trashed, and maybe there was some assaults or whatever, just random New Year's Eve type stuff. The park got trashed. Then the news was calling this is just random skater guy. The news is calling the random skater guy saying, you organized the party. There's evidence on Facebook of you, blah, 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 blah. And I think this guy like had to get a lawyer and stuff and like really had to figure out how to like say, hey, I didn't organize the event. I just said to my friends to have the party. And I think, I can't remember what ended up happening. But I know he had to have like legitimate legal stuff, and on the news they were trying to interview him on the radio on the news and stuff. I was like, damn, what the hell? Like shit like that. Australia loves shit like that. Like I said, if you go in your car and you do illegal driving and post it on YouTube, you are 100% getting the police come to your door, especially if it gets enough attention and you did something bad. Say you do a burnout in the center of the city, you post it, no one gets caught on that day. You post it, they'll come to your door. They'll figure it out, like 100%.
posted like an anti-lockdown event on Facebook. The next morning, like 7 a.m., 2 detectives come to the door and cuff her up and usher her away in front of her husband. And she was pregnant. It's like, how is that okay? I promised myself I wouldn't get too elbows deep in this because I just get so heated about it all. It's just so frustrating.
This video is so much better.
So many Australians have such strong opinions on the US when they've never even been.
Sean, you got to make more videos like this one. This one's way better than the first one. If you happen to see this, I love the authentic passion. This other one felt a little more like reading talking points. This one, he's like letting it flow.
I know it's hard to understand this level of freedom. It blows your mind. Like one time I met a couple of Aussies out here that went shooting for the first time, and they were like, it's crazy that you can just have that technology and just be a person of the public here. And it's like, that's how much it tells me how conditioned people's brains are in Australia to just believe everything the government tells them. Don't get me wrong, neither country is perfect. Australia, on one hand, you have Centrelink, you have Medicare, you have Housing Commission. If you don't
Centrelink is welfare. What's the name for it in Australia, in America? I think it's just called welfare. Centrelink is like the name of the company that does the welfare.
Have a job for a bit, they'll hook you up with money. If you need to go see the doctor, they'll pay for that. If you don't have anywhere to live, they'll hook you up somewhere to stay. Like there are so many safety nets in Australia for its Australian citizens. So you're really babysat by the government down there. But with that being said, there's a lot of things that you are not allowed to do, and you are very restricted in that sense. Whereas on the other hand, in the US, the government does not care about you, period. So you are here to fend for yourself, and with freedom comes a lot of responsibility. You've really got to keep all your bases covered, which can prove quite hard in the US. A lot of people end up homeless because they can't pay their medical bills. There's pros and cons to living in both countries. It just shits me when Australians have so much opinion on the
if
US.
he goes 2 vids not mentioning drugs, homeless, safety, I guess you touch on safety a little bit.
And like I said, not everybody gets to experience true freedom. And with freedom comes significant responsibility. America, in its infancy, was an experiment. Before that point, it had been ruled by King George III, miles away in England on the other side of the world. America literally could have been the Australia of the period if the Americans lost to the British Crown. Fortunately though, the Americans won their independence and pretty much kicked the British out.
I think AU is similar to Canada, but
being under British control.
maybe slightly
and that
different.
Victory by the Americans sparked the need for a new place for English prisoners to go, which led to the establishment of Australia. So that's pretty crazy to think about. Like if the Americans lost, the War of Independence, this would be like Australia is right now. But since they won, they kicked the English out. The English were like, oh shit, we better find somewhere to send these English convicts. Like, what are we going to do? All the jails here are full. Some bloke just stole a loaf of bread. We put him in jail for 10 years. Let's send them to Australia. The British learned from the defeat against the Americans, and they imposed even stricter rules on their convicts, who eventually became some of Australia's first European settlers. And that's why so many Australians have absolutely no issue.
I heard a story of a Canadian lady who get cancer and the wait was like 2 years. Yeah, I'm glad that you didn't say I read, Gia. You wrote I heard, because I also heard this story and I seen it on my Instagram Reels page. But yeah, that was crazy. She was saying she had aggressive cancer that was spreading, and if she waited in Canada, she just would be dead. And she went to America and like pay and get in debt and whatever. Because hey, getting in debt's better than dying. So let's do that.
And living under the rule of a distant monarch. Without sounding too American and diving too deeply down this rabbit hole, but this needs to be addressed. And literally somebody called me a MAGA in my last video. They're like, you sound like a MAGA. Anyway, Australians have the
MAGA, the most Australian thing ever. This guy he did have a MAGA-esque type hat on, I guess we could say.
Understanding the role that firearms play in this country, because it goes
make Australia great again. Hell yeah.
Think about the bloke that lives in Alaska. He's got to carry a 45 on his hip because there's wild bears. He's got to be able to defend himself going out in public against wild bears. Or the bloke that lives out on some land and has coyotes come in and attack his sheep and kill him. He needs to be able to defend his home. And
hell no, bro. Someone comes to rob you and kill you, let's defend. Boom. Someone breaks into your house, boom, get out. Do not do that. Bad.
Against wild animals. Or even just living in a house here. You want to be able to defend your home.
Hell yeah.
Lives there. You live there. Let me ask you this.
Yeah, I got an infant kid in my house. You're going to try to break in to steal my shit? Boom. Goodbye.
A group of 20-year-olds kick your front door in at 2 a.m. with machetes. They want your car keys. They want your money. They want your jewelry. You think if you dial 000 that the police are going to get there like that? They're not. At least here, you have the right to defend yourself in your home within means. Your life isn't up to the hands of somebody else. You don't have to wait for, the police to come to your house or whatever. You're able to defend yourself from the first hand, which I know is hard to understand because things of that nature didn't really happen in Australia until the last few years. But take a look.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm interested to see.
Bondi, that crazy bloke that ran through the shopping centre there, the Westfields, with a blade and stabbed a bunch of people. There was families, children, they all seen that horrific scene. And the one person that had to
go ahead and make
do
my
anything
day
about that was that one solo copper with a gun. She went in there by herself, hats off to her, and took care of business. Think about the good guy with the gun. You can't just think about the government that has the guns that they're going to protect you. People are evil. People are going to do evil regardless. Just because you live in Australia and you have a water border doesn't mean that evil ceased to exist down there. Evil exists everywhere. People are going to...
Everyone assumes America has one gun policy. It's widely state to state. Australia is relatively unified in its legal system. So it's new for me too to be like, oh, weed is legal in this state and weed is illegal in this state. I'm like, what the fuck? Even the guns and stuff. California notoriously has stricter gun rules, blah, blah, blah. Like, to me, that took a little bit to get used to. Whereas Australia, sure, the states are different. I don't fully know how it works, if I'm being honest. But they're much more unified than America.
Do evil no matter what. With all that being said, dear Australians, please open your minds. Stop watching the media. Stop believing everything the media.
I like the energy in this one. He's mad.
America. And please stop being so...
I gotta make more videos when I'm mad.
Our lives over here. I've chosen
it's kind of sick
path for my life, and it's paid off, which is crazy because when I announced on my YouTube channel that I was moving to California,
then the comments really got him.
Unsubscribed. They're like, I've supported you this far. I can't do it anymore. I feel like the decision you're making is stupid, and I'm out. That's how deeply people take this decision of me as an Australian moving to America. It just blows my mind. Like, literally, worry about your own backyard.
Not so United States of America. Yeah, exactly.
Fresh air, touch grass. See you guys in the next video.
Oh, that's his hat now. Good vid, another good vid. I enjoyed this second one much more. I'm kind of curious to see the comments now. Don't listen to me, just write congruence. Doesn't even look that bad. I'm an Australian hunter and gun owner, and I'm just getting tired of all the red tape run into living my life. I reckon if I get any stricter, then I'll just end up leaving. They ban so much just in general. I shouldn't need to worry if it's legal to take my rifle over to my uncle who's a licensed hunter so he can put a scope or something. Yeah, for real. That's the thing, is they punish all the people that are trying to abide by the law.